Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Showverse. Today, I have a very special guest with me. I have the director, the writer, the producer, the editor, and most likely the catering guy, because at this point he's a man of all hats, of the new movie Where the Wind Blows, releasing this Friday, October 24th. John Schimke, which I got that right,
You
right?
got it right. Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Where the Wind Blows is a very touching tale about a family that loses the head of their household, and a rough and rugged man comes in to try and help the family save face during the frontier days of the Old West. I
Mhm.
had the pleasure of seeing it a couple times, actually, and I gotta say, this normally wouldn't be a kind of movie that I would actively want to go out and see, but after actually watching it, I had to say, I found myself enjoying it actually quite a bit.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you.
so first off, let's just get into more of the obvious. This is an adaptation of the novel by Carolyn Fife. Carolyn Fife, is that her name?
Yes, Caroline Fife. It's adapted from her book by the same name, and it's book one of a series she wrote that's called Prairie Hearts. And this book kicks off our main characters, Chase and Jesse. And at the end of the towards the second half of the movie, they travel to a town called Logan Meadows, and the rest of the book series takes place in that town.
Now, what I always am intrigued by is the concept of adaptation.
Hmm.
As we all know, the legendary phrase, "the book is better than the movie," and then there's always this whole bunch of semantics and rhetoric that gets put into this. But
Sure.
I would like to hear it from the guy who co-wrote the screenplay with the help of Mike Maiden. The book itself is just shy of 300 pages, and this movie itself is also just shy of about an hour and 30 minutes. So tell me, what was the process like in actually adapting Carolyn's work? And, what were some of the trials, tribulations, and if Carolyn herself had any sort of say in the matter?
It's interesting how I came about to discover this book. My mother was the one who suggested that I turn this book into a movie. She had just finished reading the book, and she had said, "This would actually make a really fun movie. You should check it out." And I read it, and it was interesting because when I read the book, I saw it as a movie. There's some really great scenes, like there's um it we took some liberties in making the movie, but for example, when Chase knocks on Jesse's door, that's the beginning of the book, and she's there with the shotgun. And so already, like page one, you're like, oh man, what is going on? And then you kind of find out about, her husband's dead. This is in the beginning of the book. But then there's a lot of like great like romantic sexual tension too, like with the massage scene and things like that happen throughout the book, where you really get invested in the characters Chase and Jesse. Of you want, like, it was just funny, like me, I'm not the type of person who would read a lot of romance novels, and I just like, oh man, I hope these guys get together at the end of the book. And so taking that emotional journey, I was very excited about exploring the idea of turning it into a movie. At the time, Mike Madden and I, we were co-writing a lot of different scripts together. We would always get coffee every week, and we would be sending pages back and forth to each other. And I had contacted Caroline Fife, and I asked her, I was like, I'd really like the option or the opportunity to try to turn this into a movie. And she was very gracious and very willing to let me take her story to adapt it. And I always think about, a movie is definitely a visual medium. So, and you're getting emotionally connected through the visuals of it. And so the one thing about a novel when you're reading, like you always know what the character is thinking because they say one thing and then in the text it's like, but really, she's really there's a lot of anxiety because of X, Y, and Z and everything else. And so I think you can't really do that in a movie unless you have like a flow of consciousness narrative over the top of it, which I wasn't interested in doing. I wanted to make a traditional like Western that has romance in it, and not try to reinvent the genre in any way, but just try to tell a good Western classic story that's all about this romance. And so a lot of it ended up being setting up some context in the saloon of how Nathan dies, and then doing some rewrites at the end. There's other aspects in the book that I had to take out, but just focusing more on the relationship, making it more about this romance. He's pretending to be her husband so they can adopt this child. And, and along the way, a lot of what I like to say is like a lot of the broom gets stuck in the bicycle wheel along the way. And for me, just like every scene, every bigger scene that we had happening, like the broom had to get into the bicycle wheel at the end of each scene. And because of that, it created, the ending is a little bit different in the movie than what is in the book. And when I don't want to give it away, but when I pitched it to Caroline, I was like, I want to end the story this way. And she's like, oh, I love that ending. She's like, yes, I almost love that ending better. So she was very collaborative in the whole process. And, I always would send her pages of like, hey, this is what we're thinking, this is what we're doing. And she was always very encouraging and being like, I love this. This is great. This is fantastic.
It's always good. Sorry, let me rephrase. It's always a good sign that the original creator of said works gives their positive opinion on the work that's being done to their adaptations.
Yeah,
So to hear you say that she was actually very cooperative and very happy with how this turned out, I think speaks volumes to your skill as a filmmaker and to your team as to how you were able to successfully adapt a book of this caliber.
sure.
And we talked a little bit about westerns a little bit just now. And if you, for those of you that watch the movie, you'll know that it definitely has a very real, authentic western feel. And I think that is in part due to the fact you shot it not only large chunks of it in Montana, but you actually shot a lot of it at Yellowstone Ranch. Am I correct?
Yeah, which is also in Montana. I mean, this movie was 100% shot in Montana. We were there, we shot it for 3 weeks and set up about a month in advance. And that's why the thing looks so beautiful. Uh, I think this movie had to take place in another world. And in order to do that, you had to go find a place that was another world to go shoot your movie in. The book takes place like northwest of Wyoming, but I had some connections to the film industry that happens in Montana. So it just made a lot of sense to just let's make this movie in Montana and try to pull out as many stops as we can. And the Yellowstone Film Ranch, that's just outside of Bozeman, Montana, above the Yellowstone National Park, is a beautiful town that they built there. I mean, and it's great when you're there. Anywhere you point the camera, you're just like transported to the 1880s. It's fantastic.
And that I can't understate that enough. You have gorgeous landscape shots and a lot of very real practical sets.
Mm-hmm.
And even the costume design. A lot of this does scream and radiate the Old West in a very authentic manner that I can't help but commend you all for actually getting done. But I do want to pray. There's a couple elements of this movie that I said before we started that I really wanted to praise, and this is
Yeah.
where we get to the first element, which is the cinematography. by Derek Bauer. Derek
Yeah,
Bauer.
Derek Bauer. He's a very talented cinematographer. And this was the second movie we worked on together. He shot the first movie we did together was a dark comedy that I made a few years ago called Don't Tell Larry. And we first worked together there. And so when it came to do Where the Wind Blows, he was my first phone call. I knew I wanted this thing to look as cinematic as possible, and I knew he would be the guy I didn't have to worry about if he came on board to do this film. And he did a fantastic job. The movie is beyond my expectations of what it could have looked like.
And I don't think his skills should be, understated as well. This is a gorgeous looking movie, especially for the genre type that it is, which, I won't lie. It, as much as it is a Western, it is also very much a romance. And what I got when watching it, at least at first, was it definitely had some Hallmark kind of vibes to it. I mean, for goodness sakes, the actor who plays
100%.
Chase Logan, Trevor
Trevor.
Donovan. I
Yes.
mean, look at that man. I'm just looking. I'm just like, okay, well, that's just one of the most gorgeous guys I think I've ever seen in a movie. Why is he playing a rugged type? But what I actually do like is, at first I was like, wait, this feels like Hallmark. But at the same time, the more they got to know these characters and the more that the actual Old West kind of seeped into it, the more that I couldn't help but just get sucked into this world and into these character stories. So I am wondering, and pardon me if this seems a little
No.
overzealous. Was Hallmark kind of an influence as like a genre or concept when making this kind of movie?
Um, it was. And the interesting thing is originally when this was a long time ago, like 15 years ago, is when I first adapted this book. I intended to do it as a Hallmark movie. They had this series called Love Comes Softly, and at the time there was like a lot of these like romance historical movies and stuff. So I thought this would be something that I could sell to Hallmark to do. And because at the time I was just, I'm being a young filmmaker, I just wanted to try to sell a film that somebody would want to make. I had a lot of other weird scripts or sci-fi scripts and things like that that are a lot more challenging, and I wanted to prove myself as a director. I'm like, all I can do this. It ended up not happening that way. And ultimately, because of that, I loved the story and I love Westerns. And so what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do is make like a romance Western, like make a Hallmark movie, but give it some edge, grounded in a lot of this um, like Western movie world. Like one of my ultimate favorite movies is Once Upon a Time in the West. Like Sergio Leone is like one of the greatest, and John Ford, two of the greatest uh, directors of Western cinema, bar none. And so I wanted to be inspired by their films and take that mindset and put it into this plot that would be very Hallmark. But see, this is the other interesting thing too. Originally, when my mother handed me the book, I was like, I am not going to like this book. I do not want to read this book. But I took her suggestion. I was like, oh my gosh, I am so invested in these characters. And so I wanted to make a movie that, yes, would hit the genre, like that is very a female audience, but at the same time, the men would be like, I like this movie too. I actually like this movie a lot. Where like both men and women could sit down and enjoy this movie together. Ultimately, when you're making a movie, you're making entertainment. That's what you're making. That's the deal. That's the job. If you're going to be a filmmaker, you are making something that other people find entertaining, and you got to enjoy what you're doing. And so I liked the characters. I wanted to do it. And then at the time too, that was 15 years ago. I thought I'm not going to be able to make this. But then I met Ashley Elaine, and she has her production company, AE Productions Inc. She was looking for something that would be family friendly and Hallmark. And she asked me, she's like, do you have anything that I might be interested in producing and acting in and doing? And I was like, I think I have one script, and it was Where the Wind Blows. And she's like, she read it, she loved it. She's like, I want to do this. And I was like, okay, let's do it. But I want to give it edge. Are you okay if we give it some edge? Are you okay if we end up with a PG-13 rating? And she's like, yes, of course. She's like, I want to make something elevated. She wanted to do something that would elevate her and prove that she could carry a bigger um
A bigger
uh
weight as a lead.
as a lead. Yeah, she was in this series and movie called Mayberry Man, in which was she was the romantic interest on that, and she helped produce that. But she wanted, and that's more of like it's a romance comedy, fun little series. But she wanted to do something more dramatic. You know, she knew she could act. She wanted to prove herself that she could. That she always says, "This Where the Wind Blows is my Rocky." I'm like, well, if you want your Rocky, we got to go PG-13. So,
And for those of you that have seen the movie, there is a couple scenes that involve her character, at least in terms of some elements of her backstory that I think really
nice
allows
pun.
her to shine. Yeah, I see you smiling. You know what I did there.
Yeah,
But
I love
it,
it. I love it.
but no, in terms of performances, yeah, you have Trevor Donovan as Chase Logan, who, by the way,
He does great.
he does. And at first second, because my mom loves this genre of movie, and I'm just like, ah, I kind of get it. I
Yeah,
get it. He is charming, but he's also a very protective and rugged kind of like old-fashioned style guy that stands by his morals but never lets go of what is new. I like that. I like that a lot. But um, Jesse Strong, played beautifully by Ashley Elaine. I do want to give her flowers. She definitely plays a very strong-headed but very vulnerable
hmm,
type of lead. And like I said, with my pun intended, those scenes, which by the way, props to a certain department that was able to touch up on those aspects.
yeah,
Um, they that really made you feel, and that's I think what you mean when you said you wanted to give it some edge, because as we've stated before, this definitely at first has that sort of hallmark feel that you think would be towards one demographic, but it's able to have the trappings such as some pretty surprisingly brutal action sequences that I was kind of not really prepared. I'm like, oh, this is the kind of movie we're making. All right, I'm in. All right, you have my attention now. You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. Um,
and
and
that's where I get
really,
really excited as a filmmaker. And that's the thing. It's like those scenes that you're talking about are intense. Like there is some these action scenes and some tension scenes that are really um intense, and that's where I really love making like especially too when we were shooting some of those scenes. I was just like so excited on set to be like, oh, okay, we're shooting the action and here we go. And I was really happy with the way those turned out. But I think it's like for why it pulled you in, because you're like, oh, this is the type of movie we're doing. Like we're pulling no punches. We're pulling no punches in this movie.
like I said, there are certain other moments with Jesse's character where we talk about Edge, and for those of you watching, please be sure to check out Where the Wind Blows, because it is it's both fun, entertaining, but also deeply dramatic in ways that you would not necessarily suspect. Um, but there are a couple moments with her character and a different character who will not go named because it is a mild spoiler, but it really does catch you off guard because it does manage to balance that original tone that this was clearly made for while also bringing in that edge. It is married beautifully here, and everybody, all the actors and actresses involved just managed to juggle these tones so delicately, but also so beautifully as well. And I really think it's definitely something I would like to recommend to my mom, and I'm hopeful I can get her to watch it
Do it.
because this is her kind of movie. But at the same time, I'm sure if my dad was to walk in and go and look at the screen when he's in the middle of work, he would do that thing all dads do, which is just awkwardly stand off like 20 feet away and then
and keep
just
watching.
slowly, slowly work his way in and sit down and be like, oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Yeah.
All right, but moving forward, another aspect that we talked about, one of the things I had spoke highly of in terms of praise,
Mhm.
um, and also one of the other elements that I think differentiates this from something that you would see on TV is the score, which was done also quite beautifully by Jason and Nolan Livesay?
Livesey.
Livesey. Wow.
Yes.
But yeah, their score elevates this movie
A hundred
and
percent.
has certain swells that kind of gets you a little choked up, and especially towards the end. So tell me, were you the one who brought them on, and what was it like working with them?
Yes. Jason and Nolan have been my oldest collaborators. We met in college and I was going to film school. They were studying music and they have written, I've worked with them for years. Most of the short films I've ever done, they've written music for. And and then anything after school, anything I had done professionally, and even including Don't Tell Larry, which was my first feature film that I did, they wrote the music for that film as well. So if you like the music and Where the Wind Blows, you're definitely going to love the music and Don't Tell Larry as well. But the thing about this movie, Where the Wind Blows, Jason and Nolan, they love John Williams. They're obsessed with these old classical soundtracks. And through my friendship with them, I've learned listen to all other great musical soundtracks as well because of them. And they write music um in the film industry. They've worked on they worked on the movie Twisters. They worked on the movie oh gosh, what's the movie about Queen?
Bohemian
Bohemian
Rhapsody.
Rhapsody. Now, granted, that is all Queen music. There's like two cues in it that are not Queen, and Jason and Nolan had worked on the music for that. They've worked on some Netflix shows. They worked on How to Train Your Dragon, the Netflix series of it. But
Still phenomenal, by the way.
yeah, still great. Absolutely. I mean, I love How to Train Your Dragon. My 7-year-old loves How to Train Your Dragon as well.
I grew up with that with those movies, and I'll admit I'm a bit of a shill. So I just
No, be the shill. The music is some of the best movie newer music soundtracks that I absolutely love, or scores. But the thing about Jason and Nolan, and the thing that I love about music in cinema, is having a theme, and there's always a different iteration of the theme. Like a good example is like Indiana Jones. This is old school. Indiana Jones, Star Wars. There's like just the same theme. Everybody has these themes, and it's all different iterations all the way through to get you emotionally connected and to build into the story. And the one thing that Jason and Nolan do so well is come up with a theme and do different iterations of that theme to help with the emotion, mapping the emotion of what's happening, whether it's the same emotion, counterpoint emotion, things like that. And but the sensibility of Jason and Nolan as well is, I joke with them. I'm like, I feel like you guys were born to write the music for Where the Wind Blows, because this type of movie is the type of movies they love. They would probably buy the DVD, the Blu-ray of this movie and watch it, once or twice a year. That's like, this is their jam. So they were very excited about working on this movie. And I always feel like every time I do a film with them, they always elevate everything that is in there. And I always feel like I spend all this time, I work with temp music, when I'm editing. I spent almost 4 months editing this movie together. And finally, when I have picture lock, I send them the movie or the scenes or the reels, and I strip out all the temp music. I don't even let them listen to any of the temp music. And we sit there and we watch the movie and we kind of talk about things that we're thinking of and what could happen and what I'm looking for. And then they go and they write the music. And then when they send me chunks of the movie back with the new score, I feel like I'm watching the movie for the first time, even though I've been working on it for months with everything. And it's a big reason. I mean, audio is half of what a movie is. It's 50% audio and it's 50% visual. And we spend all this time on the visuals, and that music really does elevate the movie so beautifully. Um, and I love the theme to the the soundtrack. I mean, to Where the Wind Blows. It's I love it. And I'm very lucky that I get to work with these guys all the time.
No, and praise should be thrown their way because I was able to rewatch this movie and really dissect a lot of scenes for this interview, but I did find myself rewatching the final 2 minutes of this movie
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again because that
Really?
the final swell that is in that final scene
Yeah.
just kept hitting me more and more and more, and it just got to
Wow.
the point where I found myself really just listening to the music and just kind of toning everything else out because even when I wasn't watching what was happening on screen, everything the music conveyed still conveyed what the finale to the movie was. And I do also believe that speaks volumes to their talent. And I really
Oh yeah.
do hope that, they continue to, get better and improve because if this is just what is like a fraction of their capability, then, who knows what kind of work they got coming down the pipeline here.
For sure. And you'll probably would love to hear this little bit of news, but the soundtrack is going to be releasing in a few weeks. You'll be able to stream it on like Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you stream music. The soundtrack is going to be available just in a few weeks. We just finalized the album just last week and it got submitted, so it's coming out. So keep your eye open. The Where the Wind Blows soundtrack, you can listen to it in your car or at the gym or wherever.
And for those of you watching, even after the movie's released, link will be in the description below. So be sure to check it out because I cannot stress this enough, even though I probably already have. This is a wonderful soundtrack that needs to be listened to. But moving away from, ooh, whoops, my bad. Moving away from the score, you mentioned that it actually took you 4 months in the editing bay to at least get, what was it, the final cut of this movie done, or just the initial
No,
cut?
final. From 4 months from beginning to end. Yeah.
So let's I want to talk about that a little bit because
Sure.
as we mentioned before, this is an almost 300-page book that you were adapting. Now, I'm guessing there were certain things that you had to leave on the cutting room floor that as I'm sure Denis would have put it, you had to cut your darlings a little bit. Is there anything that you had to cut that without spoilers, obviously, that you were just like, man, if only I was able to fit this in? Like, is there anything that you can talk about in terms of that front?
Oh, that's a great question. There are a few things I did have to cut, just because the pacing, either the pacing, it was just slowing the movie down, or it was kind of confusing some things. Um, some of it just being like characters existing together, things like that. Um, Other things were some story elements that ended up having to be cut just for time. Um, and then also on set, there was, I think, the biggest thing that was unfortunate because of time. We only had 17 days to make this movie, and and when you're shooting a movie, you get thrown so many grenades that different things blow up. And unfortunately, there is this element in the story that didn't make it on screen, is where Jesse teaches Chase how to read. Um, and that was, I loved that so much, but we didn't even get a chance to shoot it just because there were some things where things went wrong, things went down, things like that, and we ended up having to cut that. The thing though, you know a lot of the things that got cut out of this movie, I feel like they were needed to be cut, because ultimately, like, when you're editing the movie, you're discovering what the story is and what the movie wants to be. It's almost like that Michelangelo mindset of like the David is inside, you're just removing the marble that isn't fitting that sculpture. And so when you're editing, it's kind of the same thing. You start to realize there are things, you as a filmmaker, you're forcing like a square peg in a round hole. Like, I want this to be in here because of X, Y, and Z. But then it's like fighting different things, making you forget or taking away some emotional beats and muddying the water. Um, and and so it took time. You have to sit with it, and you have to take time when you're editing to discover those things and then show it. I would do a lot of test audience screenings for friends, family. I mean, my assistant editor, she was a student at the American Film Institute. I went to the American Film Institute as well. I'm an alumni there. And so I went to school. I went there twice and showed the movie to the students to get feedback even from them, which was like a great resource. I mean, I showed it to all different ages to see like what was working, what was not, things like that. And so when you start getting to reactions, what type of story you want people to take away from your film. And when you start to get feedback from people, you're realizing there's different things you have in there that just need to go. And it's funny because now so much time has gone by, you almost forget what you originally had in there. It's like I have to go back and look at old cuts to be like, oh yeah, we took this out. And I remember even in the editing process, the scene when Jesse shows up to town and talks to Miss Hollyhock and gets attacked by Lonnie, that used to be really early in the movie. It's like after the saloon scene, we set up Jesse and Hollyhock and Lonnie, and then she comes back home, and then this is when Chase comes to deliver the message. But what ended up happening over time, I moved it deeper into the middle of the movie because it made more sense there, just because of some rising tension escalations that needed to happen to keep our focus on Lonnie's character. And I had completely forgot about that. And then I remember, we just had our premiere 2 weeks ago, and somebody who saw an early cut was like, they told me, they're like, oh, I love how you moved that scene later on in the movie. You used to have that towards the top. It works out really well. And I just think to myself, oh, I forgot that it was even that way. It's like what the movie is now is like what the movie wanted to be. But you got to let time happen when you're editing to let those things settle in. You can't do it quickly. This is the editing process is really what makes a movie a movie. You discover your cinematic moments in the editing process. And in fact, I believe cinema is created in the editing process. It's the only part of filmmaking that separates this art form from any other art form, because filmmaking, cinema is, dramatic writing, acting with the stage, photography with cinematography, music with like an orchestra, composing. It's taking all these elements, you're putting them all together, and then you're sitting in an edit bay and you're putting them all together. Like if I take out the sound here and leave the music up, I'm creating something complete. I'm creating an experience that you can only happen if you do those sorts of things. And and just I think with anything, if you're writing music or doing photos, I mean, Ansel Adams was like, you take 1,000 photos and then you get 3 good ones. So, and that takes a lot of time to take 1,000 photos. And in writing, you're rewriting. Bill Shakespeare, I don't know what his quote is on that, but I'm sure he wrote a lot to get to Hamlet. I mean, Stephen King is always talking about how he has to rewrite all the time to get to whatever the story it is, what it wants to be. And so the way I view it is I always want a lot of time to edit the movie to make the movie the best it could possibly be. Um, and I know people, they'll spend, I was just talking to somebody I went to school with. I had my alumni party just last weekend, and he was an editor on that Netflix show One Piece. And he literally was telling me he worked on one episode and it took him a whole year to edit that episode, where they were just reworking things and things like that. And so, I mean, that's just for one of those episodes on a Netflix show. So you want to spend a lot of time editing. I'm a true believer in that. Low budget filmmaking, though, you don't get a lot of time doing it. But I think, that's why I cut the movie, because I can keep editing the movie for free until it's time, until I get tapped on my shoulder like, hey, Schimke, this movie's got to go to market. We got to be done here, and it's like, okay, all right, all right, all right. But it's like, I don't know. To me, editing is an exciting aspect of filmmaking, because you get to discover what cinematic moments truly are cinematic for your audience.
And who better to get the job done in the editing bay than the director himself? It's, as we were talking about phrasings and sayings, it's, if you want the job done, you got to do it yourself. And, it's definitely clear with how this movie is paced and edited that, you definitely were at least allotted the more reasonable amount of time needed. And, it is unfortunate that, you had to cut some of these darlings,
Yep.
um, because there was something I actually did want to bring up to you, at least a little bit after, but uh, there was a scene towards the, I guess, top of the third act that involves Chase and a certain note that he's given. And I kept wondering, I'm like, and here's the thing, you giving that context does now reinterpret that scene for me, because I just, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, he just simply doesn't want to read it. That he's not strong enough to deal with that information. But in all actuality, it's just a matter of he simply literally could not read it. He wasn't he couldn't read it. And I do think that also speaks to levels of adaptation as well,
Yeah.
because it is the difference between how we view and the context of certain scenes. Without that context, it's just he's probably not strong enough to read it. But with that context is he literally
Can't.
cannot read it.
Yeah.
Um, Now, 4 months, that is a long time to be stuck in an editing bay. I mean, I know plenty of editing guys that they're like, yeah, we basically turn into gremlins with no light, because, our entire focus is simply on this movie. But as I stated near the beginning, you were the editor for this movie, you were the writer, you were the director, you're the producer, probably the catering guy as well. We don't really know about that yet. You could have gone unedited.
Definitely not. But if it needed to be that way, I would have swung by Quiznos to pick up sandwiches.
But by the way, good choice, Quiznos.
I love Quiznos.
But this also does, when you're working with a very low budget, which this is on the lower side of
It is.
budgetary costs. You're forced to wear a lot of hats. Um, during these types of shoots. And I'm wondering, because I've looked into your filmography before. This isn't the first time you've had to, put on several hats at once. But for you specifically, when it comes to this project, Was that stressful? What were some of the trials and tribulations that came from having to, do all of these jobs at once?
It's 100% stressful. It's the most stressful thing about it. Even, the movie's coming out on October 24th, and we have a limited theatrical release, and it's going to be streaming on Apple TV and Amazon. And I'm right now wearing the marketing hat. Like, I'm managing the Instagram account, and I'm doing other things for other people that are willing to do promos for us. And I'm like, okay, what do you need? And helping come up with even the marketing plan for marketing this movie. But that's just the reality of independent film. I think, early on when I was going to school, the filmmakers that would come and talk, they all were saying the same thing. They're like, if there's something you're really passionate about or you want to start your career, you're going to have to be the one that's going to have to spearhead it. Nobody's going to like pluck you out and just give you a movie to direct. You're going to have to create that opportunity for yourself. And for some people, if you got a good group together, you got different people wearing those different hats. But the reality is, because making a movie takes so much energy, so much time, and can take so much money, you end up, if you really want to see it happen, you have to end up wearing all the hats. I mean, from raising the money, um, to being a producer. I mean, the reason why I share a producing credit with our other producers, um, is because that was the only way the movie was going to get the only way the movie was going to get made. I feel very fortunate because when you're in development and creating a project, my partnership with Ashley was really great because she and I we could see from the same point of view on things, on how things should get done and why things should get done and how they should get done in the timeline. And when other people were unable to importance of why something should get done, it was her and I who would step in to make those things happen. But that's just the reality of independent filmmaking. It's just, you got to do it. Even when it comes down to, you got to drive your ass all the way down to the pawn shop to find a prop, you know, you got to be able to do it. That did not happen on Where the Wind Blows, but if that was the case, I would have done it. I've done it for all my other films. I mean, for Don't Tell Larry, I live in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of companies here that make props, or you can rent props and things like that. And so I literally needed all sorts of different props, and I just drive to the prop house and just look for the prop myself and be like, can I rent this for a month? And then ship it to, we shot in Texas and ship it to Texas. Just because me as a director, I was like, I want to do this. I want it to look like that. And you got to take ownership in what you do. The goal for me, though, is whatever needs to be done, I'll do it. I'll step in and I'll do it. And hopefully in the future, be able to work with more talented people and have, bigger opportunities that way. But you got to schlep your way through the beginning, in every way. Sorry, that was like meandering a little bit, but it's
What? No, no, no,
there's
no.
no there's no that's just the reality. For Where the Wind Blows, it's like Ashley was the one, I want to do this, I can find money for this, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna join, like, we'll do it together, we're gonna go do it. And basically it was her and I making all the things happening. And that was the only reason why this movie got made.
Well, to go back to that previous comment you made, you were not meandering, you were honestly just giving a very honest opinion about the hardships of
Sure.
independent filmmaking. You're
Yeah.
not given like millions upon millions of dollars. You're given a finite amount and you got to work within the confines of said budget. And sometimes that does mean actually, uh, as we just mentioned before, if you want something done, you got to do it yourself. So if that
Yeah.
means literally getting in your car, driving 20 miles to the nearest pawn shop, then that's what needs to get done. And I do honestly wish and hope that you are given access to a better budget and a lot more opportunities because if I can shill you up just a little bit, your capabilities as a filmmaker are fully present with Where the Wind Blows. You made something
Thank
that
you.
was widely accessible, despite the fact it comes off as a certain, made for TV like Hallmark style movie. You were
Yeah,
actually
I mean, look at this. I mean, this is very hallmarky, But I'm not, but it's a romance. It is
it's
what it is.
It is what it is, but you also made something that even a schmuck like me, I I looked at this, I'm just like, oh boy, okay, let's get this over and done with. And like I said, I watched it twice, and I wound up watching the final 2 minutes over and over and over again because I'm just like, damn, this is good.
Loved
I
it.
like this. But we are coming up near the top of the hour, and I know, you are a very, very busy man. But I do have one final question.
Of
That's
course.
sort of just two in one. And that really is going back to what you said and speaking about the trials and tribulations of independent filmmaking, as well as wearing like 4 or 5 hats at once.
Sure.
Um, let's just, for example, say you are given a blank check right now, dropped in front of you. What project do you make with it? Is there an upcoming project that you have down the pipeline that you're going to use that money for that we should probably keep our eyes out open for? Or is there just like a dream project where you're like, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to make?
I love that question. I have a lot of different stories I want to make, and if I had a blank check, I would want that blank check to finance all these different screenplays I want to make. But if I was going to choose one of those, um, I have a movie I would love to make that it's another period piece, but it's a World War II period piece about the 10th Mountain Division that fought in the Southern European campaign. My father, growing up, uh, I was very late to the family. I had a very older father. My dad was 62 when I was born, and he was way older. And he fought in World War II, and he was a platoon sergeant in the 10th Mountain Division. And growing up, he would always tell all these amazing stories about his experience. He was a fabulous storyteller, and I would write down all these stories, and my sister and I would outline it of like what this could be. And I've been to Italy twice with my father to Riva Ridge and Mount Belvedere where he fought. And there's this big battle um, where the United States made an advancement. They broke what was called the Nazi Gothic line. The Nazis called it the Gothic line. The United States called it the Green line, but nobody could break it. But there was one weak point. There was this 400-foot um, uh, cliff that they thought the Nazis thought nobody's going to climb this. In the 10th Mountain Division, they trained skiing and rock climbing, and they trained for 2.5 years in Colorado, and Washington D.C. didn't know where to put them. And finally, when nobody could break the Gothic line, and they figured out like, hey, we can send our mountain troops up Riva Ridge and then take Mount Belvedere. If we take that at the same time, we can advance through Southern Europe to Germany. And so they send the 10th Mountain to do it. And my dad was part of the first wave that took Mount Belvedere. And so I'd love to tell a story about that. And I have so many stories from my dad. I've been there twice and with other veterans describing their story. And I'd love to do that. It would be like a Saving Private Ryan, Thin Red Line, Band of Brothers. I mean, it's your Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg 3.0 is basically what this thing would be.
You see, now that's a movie that I would like to see. I'm always down for a very solid World War II movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, I pay to see it. That's just me. And on that note, uh, John, I very much appreciate you giving your time to talk about Where the Wind Blows,
Thank you, Noah.
releasing in select theaters and on demand October 24th, 2025. Links in the description below. Feel free to check it out. And honestly, talking with you has been nothing short of a treat. I look forward to seeing how this movie performs and where your career goes.
Thank you, Noah. It's been great chatting with you on your show.
No, the pleasure's all mine. Take care and have a good rest of your day.